Welcome into a special edition of the Oxford Exxon podcast here on MPW Digital. It's the World Cup preview. Been talking some World Cup. I know my guy Tyler Siskey says that soccer's communist, including the World Cup, and he's wrong. We're going to start proving that here over the next few weeks as the World Cup gets going. The U.S. and Wales on Monday in the first match, I should say, of round play. Joined today by a couple of guys who do an absolutely fantastic soccer podcast. It's called the Always Cheating Podcast. You can catch it wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. It's also part of the Blue Wire network with us. It's Josh Landon, Brandon Kelly. Guys, thanks so much for spending some time with me.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Neil. Yeah, good to be here.
You guys, give me a little bit.
Go USA.
Yeah, go USA.
I'm just going to jump in there with the enthusiasm for, you've got your Spurs kit on here, Neil. So I think we're going to have to talk a little bit about the Premier League.
Yeah, let's talk some Premier League real quick because I do want to talk about this. The last World Cup. So my son, who's now 16, obviously 4 years ago was 12 years old. He's super into soccer. He watches EPL, La Liga, Bundesliga. He'll watch a little MLS. He just loves eating up with it. Loves it. And so 4 years ago, I'm screwing with him because just trying to watch it, and I'd not watched much soccer. And I said, hey, whoever scores the next goal in the World Cup, whoever he plays for, that's my team. Well, my son's a Chelsea fan. I had no idea that Chelsea and Tottenham were like bitter rivals. Had I known that, I probably would have waited for a different game because I didn't know who Harry Kane played for. And we were watching England and I can't remember. It was England and maybe Portugal or England and somebody. And the next goal was scored by Harry Kane for England. And I said, who does he play for? He says, Tottenham. So I'm like, well, I'm a Tottenham fan now. And 4 years later, now when Tottenham and Chelsea play, we have to go to separate parts of the house. But
right. North London versus West London. That's
That's my World Cup experience. But the English Premier League has been fantastic this year, at least in my opinion. I mean, it's been super entertaining on Saturday mornings as we get ready for Saturdays of college football. I turn it on Saturday morning, go to the gym, get my treadmill in, stuff like that. It's been fantastic. You guys follow it much closer than I do. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, Josh and I totally agree. And we talk week after week, like, wow, this weekend was just as entertaining as the last. And it's hard to say. A lot of it is down to the great soccer that's being played, but the Premier League has been impacted by the last 2 years because the European season goes from August to May. It's a long season, and COVID has been a huge disruption. I mean, you see the NCAA basketball tournament vanished into thin air one year, and then suddenly we forgot about it because we had a great NCAA tournament last season. But I think the diehard fans of the Premier League who stuck it out through the last 2 years are really being rewarded, which in a way, Josh, it makes this World Cup interruption in the regularly scheduled season. It does feel more like an interruption than a tournament does.
The timing's kind of crazy. I mean, it's the first time we've ever had a World Cup, so it's a really interesting, or a Winter World Cup, I should say. Yeah, we've had World Cups for about 80 years now. But the first Winter World Cup we ever had, and it's kind of interesting. I mean, everything is sort of bent, for this World Cup. And typically, you'd end the season in May, you'd have the Champions League final a week later, you'd have a month off, and then boom, World Cup. And it's sort of that's your summer. Brad and I both live in New York, and it's great. Bars spill out, and it's awesome. So, but this time around, the Premier League just ended. It just went on break on Sunday, and it's off only until a week after the World Cup ends. So it's almost like it's like a long weekend. They're sort of like they're squeezing a World Cup. And all the European teams are doing this as well. Partially because, as Brandon mentioned, unlike almost every sport in the U.S., it really is like a full season calendar. It starts in August, ends in May. Just a little bit of time off. So, but I'm really excited about it because I got extra vacation time. I've been storing it up. I'm ready. I'm ready for it. B, the U.S. is actually in the World Cup this year, which they weren't 4 years ago. So that's a very nice change. And do I need to see? I don't know. It's the World Cup. Like the matches are all great. It's just, it's going to be super fun the whole time. Looking forward to it.
Do you anticipate the weather? I mean, it sounds crazy here because it's getting awfully cold in New York. It's cold here in Mississippi as we record this tonight. It's in the low 40s. It's about to drop even more than that. it's not going to be that way out there. That dry, arid air, super hot. How is that going to impact the soccer, if at all, in your opinion?
I do wonder. It was quite warm, and not a dry warm, when the World Cup was in Brazil a couple of cycles ago, and they introduced water breaks in the midst of the halves. Like, one of the appeals of soccer is that the play is nonstop, the clock is nonstop, so there's this feeling of continuous action. But these water breaks, they're kind of necessary just to keep the players hydrated and keep them healthy. So I think we'll see that in Qatar. There were all these promises by Qatar that they would have air conditioned pitches, like the introducing new technology into infrastructure. That has not come to pass, but I think that's why it seems like Brazil and Argentina, I think, are getting tapped, because you have players that maybe, even though many of them play in Europe professionally, are used to warmer temperatures.
Brazil.
Sorry,
go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I apologize. I have a 6-year-old who doesn't want to take a bath happening behind me there. So if you guys hear screaming, that's what's going on. I think what I think will be great for a casual fan, though, or somebody who doesn't follow the soccer, or who doesn't follow soccer / football, the Premier League, or any other, or even MLS that closely, is these teams haven't played very much together, and so that in some ways you think, oh, that's like, so they're not going to be as well drilled. But I think from an entertainment standpoint, that's actually a plus, because I think we can see some super high scoring games, because when these international teams are really well drilled, that's when they tend to be a lot better defensively, score goals in the counterattack, things like that. So I think, sorry, there's some serious screaming going on behind me. So I think that I think we could see some kind of wild, 4-3 type matches. And, if you don't really know any of the players on either of the countries, that to me is more fun. Give me a, Japan, Senegal 4-3 or whatever. That just sounds, like a lot of fun to watch.
So Brazil's kind of the favorite. They're 4-1 favorite in Vegas. I was pulling up some Vegas odds earlier today. France is plus 600. Argentina's plus 700. I think England's plus 800. Spain's like plus 800. I mean, those are not terrible odds in a tournament with that many teams. It sounds like the expectation, at least from a odds maker standpoint, is that this is going to be a pretty competitive World Cup. That it's not. Yeah. It's not predetermined, if you will, that who the last 2 or 3 teams are going to be. There's multiple teams who have a chance to go deep into the tournament.
I think part of it is there are some great players in all those teams that you mentioned, but also a lot of these superstar nations that have performed so well, they have younger teams. Like, they've gone through a generation. Spain in particular had like the most elite national team for a decade, and now they're trying to bed in younger players. And Brazil is at this point where they have enough veterans from Neymar and Thiago Silva, and then the younger players are kind of like just experienced enough where it might all gel together. So I think there are a lot of younger teams and unproven international talent at the international level that it's becoming hard to predict, which makes it seem like it's going to be Lee.
I don't know if I lost Brennan's audio there. I don't know if you lost it too, Neil.
Yeah. I got nervous that it was mine. We lost you there for a second, Brandon.
No, it's going to be wildly unpredictable is what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, someone didn't want you to say that. That was like the.
I know. Qatar is listening in. I can tell we're getting
cut you out there.
Let's talk about the U.S. because obviously a lot of casual fans or non-fans who just will watch this because it's an event will be cheering for the U.S. I thought it was great for U.S. soccer that the U.S. is in it from an interest standpoint as we go into this kind of sports smorgasbord season where we've got the college football season winding down with the championships and the NBA's getting into month 2, the NFL's entering the stretch, where the playoffs are not that far away. Every game's got playoff implications. We're not far from the bowl season. There's all this stuff going on. College basketball is getting started. And so there's just so much sports going on. And the fact that the World Cup's going on and that the U.S. is in it, I thought was really big for at least getting people who might not otherwise follow it to go, okay, I'll watch the U.S. and Wales, and then I'll watch the U.S. and England. And then if the U.S.-Iran game determines whether the U.S. gets to the round of 16, yeah, I'm in. we like brackets in this country. I always say that all the time
Yeah.
because we love brackets. And can this team? I mean, everybody knows Christian Pulisic. I'll give you guys an anecdote. What was interesting to me, I was in Las Vegas this summer with my son, and we went to see Chelsea against a team out of Mexico, Copa. I can't think of it. Copa America.
Club America, maybe.
Yeah,
Mexico
Club America.
City.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, it was 64,000 people in Allegiant Stadium, and all these kids wearing Chelsea jerseys. And I'm going to guess that most of them were not from North London.
Right.
And it was pretty cool. And I thought, Pulisic, they're going to be watching him in the World Cup. Can the U.S. get out of their group with England and Wales and Iran?
Yeah, I mean, they can get out of that group for sure. I in fact, I'd say they're, I don't know, arguably favored to get out of that group. I'm not in first place. I think England has a legitimate shot to actually win the World Cup. So, we played them 12 years ago in South Africa. It was a 1-1 draw. It was kind of a cheap goal that we conceded.
Goal keeping howler there by Green. Dempsey scored it down.
We still had to keep him out. They only got one past us.
Right.
So,
I think we saw at the sports book at the win that US was favored to get second in the group. And I mean, we're going to learn a whole lot about this team when they play Wales on Monday. Wales is kind of like a perfect opening match for US, like the other teams in the group. Yeah, we mentioned England, but then, well, they, in terms of like expectations, in terms of player quality, now Gareth Bale plays for Wales, and he was at one point one of the best players in the world. He's much older now, so he's not going to have
he might still be the best player on the pitch for that match, though.
Sure. I mean, yeah. But I think beyond a player like Gareth Bale, Wales and US sort of match up, and like you have really talented players, but not the best in their positions going toe to toe. Lots of people who probably come from farming backgrounds, Neil, probably
Welsh
playing
farmers.
Yeah, I mean, Welsh farmers, American farmers.
Yeah. Most of that Wales team plays in the Premier League, so it's Bale obviously played for Spurs, many years. I actually came back for a year last year, but I think that it's an interesting team. It's Brandon and I are not in love with the manager, Greg Berhalter, not a huge fan, but I'm putting that aside. It's sort of like, it's like Thanksgiving, right? It's actually appropriate. The biggest game of the World Cup from my vantage point is 2 p.m. Eastern time on the Friday after Thanksgiving. The U.S. plays England, and that match is just like that. No one's working. You got to watch that match. It's going to be great. Try to, and my advice for anyone who hasn't watched a lot of World Cup is go somewhere where other people are watching it. Watch with as many people as possible, because it's just more fun. There's like a crazy energy because it's just so rare that you actually root for an entire country together with other people. And I remember going with Brandon when the U.S. played Ghana. This is in the 20. Was it the 2014 World Cup, Brandon, or 2010?
It would have been the 2010, yeah.
The 2010 World Cup. Once we went to this bar in Brooklyn, and just standing room only, 200 people, and just Christian Pulisic, Landon Donovan. That's how long ago it's been. Landon Donovan goes up to take a pen, and it's like hush silence, 200 people, and then he scores and just rips through the entire bar. But you don't even get that for like a Super Bowl, right? Because you have teams on either side. But for something like the U.S., even the Olympics, it's not quite the same. But it's so concentrated for the World Cup, and so it's a really fun, thrilling moment. And so I'm really looking forward to that one.
I remember that because I brought my wife, who I was dating at that time, who has never expressed interest in any sport ever, and we were still kind of in the get to know you period. So she said, I'll go to the bar and check this out. And when that goal that Josh mentioned by Landon Donovan went in, she was so overwhelmed by the room that she had like tears of not terror, but of joy, because it is infectious. And I think that's why it's important for like content creators as Americans talking about soccer. It's important to have the US in so that we can get new fans invested, because I do think if an American who's new to soccer catches a moment like that in the World Cup, especially with the Americans, they'll be hooked. I totally think that.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, I'm with you on the Friday afternoon. I cover Ole Miss, and Ole Miss unfortunately, every year plays its rivalry game against Mississippi State on Thanksgiving night, which makes Thanksgiving
Egg Bowl, right?
Egg Bowl. That's
Okay,
correct.
all right.
Makes Thanksgiving Day kind of weird because you got to go work that night and you got to write, so you're not exactly going to get too deep into the Cabernet on Thanksgiving Day. But the day after, all bets are off, and so yeah, I'm excited about that 1 o'clock, and I think it's noon here, maybe 1 o'clock Eastern, noon here to turn on um, the World Cup on that Friday. I won't have any work to do, and I can turn that on and yeah, and just cheer for the U.S. And I was having this conversation with my son and one of his friends. We were going to their club practice 45 minutes away about a month ago or so, and he's like, how big of a deal would it be if the U.S. won the World Cup? And I'm like, well, and then before I went, oh, it wouldn't happen. I said, you know what it would be like? And I said, you guys are probably too young to remember this. I'm probably a little older than you. I was 10 years old when the U.S. beat the Russians in Lake Placid. And I'll never forget that weekend. I was only 10 years old. We didn't have cable or any of that stuff, right?
Yep.
It sort of spread through word of mouth. And that happened on a Friday. And we watched the replay. We didn't know it was a replay on the Olympics. And they win. And by Sunday, literally in our church service on Sunday, it was about the gold medal game. And everybody watched on that Sunday afternoon the gold medal game where the U.S. beat Finland, to win the gold medal. And, 4 days earlier, we didn't know who Mike Eruzione was or Jim Craig or any of these guys, and Herb Brooks and those guys. And now me, a kid in Louisiana, where I grew up, I didn't know anything about hockey. I mean, I don't even understand the rules, like what's icing, and all of a sudden we're just jumping up and down and we're screaming. And it was kind of like that. And I was like, I think it would be like that. And the odds of that obviously are, well, 10,000 to 1 in Las Vegas, if you're looking for the odds. But how cool would that be? But it would be so neat to see the U.S. get to match play, pull off an upset, get to a quarterfinal where the whole country for a couple hours, we're a really divided country, where the whole country for a couple hours was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if these guys could do it? I mean, and I think that would really be great for the sport here in the States at a time when, young people, and you guys know this because you talk about it all the time on your show, where young people can now watch the English Premier League. They can watch La Liga. They can watch Bundesliga. MLS is growing. I was going to tell you, I was asking you guys about this before we started. 136 English Premier League players in this tournament, which is double La Liga, which is next. But the MLS, which not that long ago, you'd go to an MLS game and you're like, man, this is okay, but it's way down.
Sure.
36 MLS players, which is not a huge number, but it's a bigger number than it was 4 years ago. And the sport's kind of growing a little bit in the country, and including on the professional ranks.
Yeah, Josh and I had season tickets to NYC FC for one season, and we kind of had that experience. We wanted to really be a part of the league growing in the States, but you couldn't help but see that it was the quality was a little below what we would see like on NBC watching the Premier League. And I think this is why the World Cup is interesting for American fans, because we are used to, in the US, the best leagues are based here in the US, NBA, NFL, et cetera, obviously. And the best leagues for soccer are in Europe. So we see our best American players, we kind of lose them to Europe. And it feels like, well, how attached can you get to Pulisic when he lives in London, and you see him so removed, playing in front of in front of fans in West London who you may not be able to relate to. And now the World Cup is your opportunity to back your boys, because they're representing you. They're not representing a club on another continent, which makes it really cool. And it is great to see MLS raising the game. I mean, I think I watched more MLS this past season than I had previously. And I think they're kind of getting the formula right on their program, the broadcast time slots. It's easier to watch. So that would be, I think it would be huge for MLS if there was a breakout MLS star at the World Cup. I'm thinking of players like James Rodriguez for Colombia a couple of World Cups ago. Not many people had heard about him, and then he had these incredible performances for Colombia against teams like Brazil. Suddenly everyone wants to know who he is. If MLS could have one of their players perform like that, that would accelerate, I think, the development of the league.
All right, last couple of things. I really appreciate y'all's time. Give me your World Cup pick. Who's the country that you kind of think's walking away with this?
What do you think, Josh?
Well, I'll go with no country, I should say, has ever won the World Cup twice in a row. But I think if anyone's got a shot to do it, I think it's this France team. Just really, they're top to bottom. They have about as good a midfield, defense, and forward line as you're going to find anywhere. Very capable keeper and Spurs' Hugo Lloris, and I don't know, just it feels like there's a lot of unity. They have the Ballon d'Or winner as well. So I don't know. I feel like I actually think it's a really wide open World Cup, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a total wild card that won it. But I'm going to go with the boring betting favorite right now with France.
I'm going to be rooting for Belgium. I don't know, Josh. Could you say that Kevin De Bruyne is like the Peyton Manning of European soccer? I mean, he's got the brain, he's got the talent,
the quarterback role.
He looks kind of weird. He's kind of a pasty farm boy looking guy. I love watching him play. To me, he's like a beautiful player to watch. So I will be watching all the Belgian matches for that. But I do think Brazil has the perfect cocktail. Like I was saying earlier, like the mixing of the generations and the experience will really help push them through. And having a good defense is so vital to winning an international tournament like this. So yeah, I'm just going to go with the favorite in Brazil.
We picked the two favorites. Really boring answer. Sorry.
Controversial. Yeah.
All right, you guys are Big Ten guys. You're Michigan State guys. You're my people. As everyone's making fun of me right now, I can feel the eyes rolling all over Mississippi and our listening audience. Give me, but you guys keep up with the SEC some. Me, especially you, Josh. Give me who is for Ole Miss fans who don't keep up with soccer and they're going to turn this on. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to cheer for the Americans, and then when the Americans are out, who do I cheer for? Give me who would Ole Miss? What country would be the Ole Miss of the World Cup?
Well, I thought about this question. It was sort of tossed to me a couple of days ago. So I had a little time to kick it around, and my thinking was, if you think of Europe as the SEC, and you have sort of a couple of clubs, Italy is sadly not in the World Cup, France, England, maybe they're sort of like the Bama, Georgia, the kind of the sort of consistent like title contending teams. I think, and this is going to sound kind of like maybe like a little unusual, but to me, the country that I think Mississippi kind of compares to is Denmark. And Denmark, they have incredible talent. They have Christian Eriksen. They have actually won a European championship. Although I think the farthest they've gone in the World Cup itself, I think, is the semifinals, which is actually fine. I mean, even a country as good as Mexico has actually never made it past the quarterfinals. So it's a strong history. They're a very strong team with like a really scrappy midfield. So I don't know if that compares to like, I don't know like the Mississippi like offensive line well enough to know if that's like an apt comparison or not. But sort of like right there. And I say that, and as a Michigan State fan, I think it's sort of comparable. I feel like maybe Mississippi and Ole Miss, Mississippi. I feel like that there's sort of in Michigan State there's a little bit of kind of parallels there, maybe in terms of where we kind of sit in our own conference. Yeah. I mean, occasionally we can pop off and make a Big Six bowl, but it's we're sort of like we're fighting for that tier right there. So the Michigan State did make a playoff. Seems like a long time ago now. I think it was 8 years ago. So I just think they're kind of a fun team. They're the Danish Dynamite. Is their nickname, and that's just sort of a fun name, fun squad to root for. I think the Eriksen story is great because a year and a half ago, Eriksen was playing in the European. He was playing the European Championships, and he collapsed. I had this heart issue, and it looked like he may have actually passed on the pitch.
I remember that. It's terrifying.
Yeah,
Yes.
really dramatic, really scary moment. He was playing at the time in Inter Milan, and it looked like he would. He actually plays for Man United now. It looked like he would maybe never play another minute, and he didn't play. I think for almost an entire season. Came back, played some minutes for Brentford last year, and then rejoined Man United, and actually scored just last weekend. And so he's going to be really the sort of talismanic player, I think, for Denmark. Just a really fun guy to root for. They have Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who's just a bruiser, just a really fun guy in the midfield as well. And then they have a Premier League winning goalkeeper in Kasper Schmeichel as well, who's just sort of a fun, played for Leicester for a decade, a really easy guy to root for. So that's my comparison. I think that they stand a good chance of at least making the quarterfinals, and it would not be insane for them to win the World Cup. I don't think it's likely, of course not. There's enough big favorites, but I think that they have like a reasonable chance of it, and they're just a really fun team to root for. And so
they're called the Danish Dynamite, Josh. I mean, what better than to turn on the TV and root for the Danish Dynamite? Sounds great. And as a Spurs fan, Neil, there's a lot to like there with Christian Eriksen and Højbjerg. It's a great Spurs parallel.
Yeah, you sold me. I'm
all right. Fair enough.
As soon as the U.S. is out, I'm like, okay, I'm Denmark now, unless Harry Kane's running around, and then I'll be like, well, you're the guy that impacted the last 4 years of my soccer fandom. All right, I know you guys are going to be putting out a lot of content. How can people follow you throughout the World Cup, and then probably beyond after they become fans of your show?
Yeah, we'll see if we've bitten off more than we can chew, but Josh and I are moving to a daily World Cup pod starting on Sunday, November 20th, when the World Cup picks up. So you can subscribe to our feed, Always Cheating, wherever pods are available. All of our links and information is at our website, alwayscheating.com. We're most active on Twitter at Hell Cheaters. So if you're a Twitter user in the age of Musk, you can still find us there. But yeah, our goal for the coverage, Josh, during the World Cup is to keep it brief, just sort of like be your daily companion during the tournament, talk about what we're enjoying and what we're looking forward to as the days go by.
Yeah, sounds great. I look forward to following it. Thanks so much for joining me tonight, and look forward to the World Cup and your coverage of it as well.
Thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it.
You guys have a great evening.